From alligators attacking policemen on the highway to a bull attacking motorcycle drivers at a gas station, today we're going to show you some footage that you wouldn't have believed if it wasn't filmed on the road. In these brief images coming from a surveillance camera installed in a gas station, we see two women on a motorcycle, chased by a rather aggressive bull. The two women, who surely had just made this unpleasant and unusual encounter, were trying to avoid the attack of the angry animal. One wonders what the reason for the bull's outburst was. Perhaps the noise of the motorcycle made him nervous, or was it the simple sight of a person turning on his back? In any case, he was serious about charging the two people at the gas station. The two people are so panicked that they decide to abandon the bike. We see the first person get off and run away, followed by his friend, who barely avoids a violent blow from the horns. If the bull doesn't hit his two targets, he ends up hitting the gas pump, which didn't resist the shock. Fortunately, the two people were surely already far away. But will they have the courage to come back quickly to recover the motorcycle before thieves take it away? We don't know. Anyway, this bull attack in the middle of the night in a gas station is one of those things you have to see to believe. China, as you know, was recently hit by deadly floods. In this footage captured by a surveillance camera, two men are seen helping each other move a motorcycle from a walkway to a boat moored nearby. The maneuver is anything but simple. Between the bridge and the boat, connected by a makeshift board, we see a river swollen by the flood. To transport the motorcycle from one point to another, and especially to avoid slipping and drowning, a lot of skill was required. The owner of the motorcycle entrusted two assistants to hold each side of the vehicle and to move it slowly along the narrow board. The two men, one backing up as the other moves forward, made the crossing with great care. But seeing that half of the journey has been completed, the assistant on the right feels that he has done his part and decides to withdraw. The other man tries to keep the bike balanced by holding the handlebars, but he doesn't succeed. The bike tips over and falls into the water, and of course, an argument breaks out between the two men. One accuses the other of clumsiness, and this one seems to retort to him that he had only to continue to help him. We see him losing his patience and moving forward to fight. But whatever the outcome of this conflict, the bike will not come back. The protagonist simply had to coordinate better. Alligators attacking policemen. It's hard to believe, but this is what really happened south of San Antonio in the United States, in the middle of the highway. The presence of this adventurous alligator, 2.5 meters long, and which gave a hard time to the police officers, is explained by the proximity of Lake Mitchell, from where it probably moved away to come to bask on the road. So police officers scrambled to try to get him back into his environment. But the task was as difficult as it was dangerous. The alligator was not only recalcitrant, but also very aggressive, and law enforcement is not specifically trained to evacuate a raging alligator. But while trying to neutralize the alligator with capture sticks, the officers couldn't help but find the situation comical and exchange pleasantries. Finally, through their patient and skillful maneuvering and combined efforts, they were able to safely transport the animal to its habitat. But if they succeeded in expelling this alligator, the policemen cannot eliminate the risk that these reptiles attack the population, and all they can do is to call for caution. Finally, for these policemen, who are surely used to fighting armed criminals, this adventure will remain a small matter of anecdote for them. Being a policeman in Russia, as you can guess, is not a relaxing job, especially when you're in charge of road safety and you have to fight against the scourge of drunk driving. The problem is certainly worrying, but we will talk about another threat to the traffic police in Russia. In these pictures showing a part of the highway from Taganrog to Rostov-on-Don, we can see that the offender can save the life of a policeman. But first, we can see on the first lane of the highway, the traffic policeman, barely visible in the dark despite his fluorescent vest, signaling the motorist to stop in order to examine his papers. The driver complies. The policeman approaches the door, asks for the driver's license, then examines it while asking a few questions. Suddenly, he hears an alarm call and turns around to look around in the dark. But it wasn't long before he realized what was happening. A pack of wolves had emerged from the nearby woods and was invading the highway. The most alarming thing was that these predators were running towards the policeman and seemed to want to attack him. The officer immediately tried to open the rear door of the vehicle, which was quickly unlocked by the motorist. He threw himself on the bench and locked himself in, narrowly avoiding the assault of the pack that had passed the car and continued its race to who knows where. But he is far from being the only one who lives in constant anxiety. Russia has more than 100,000 wolves. And in many villages, mainly in the north of the country, people have learned to live in the vicinity of these predators. When they are in need of food, wolves come to invade the villages and devour hunting dogs, more rarely human beings. But to come back to our funny sequence, we imagine now that the policeman will not be too intransigent with the motorist once the threat of the wolves is gone. These incredible images are captured by an Ohio Department of Transportation camera in the United States. It's 6:45 a.m. and we see a totally congested highway and a white SUV out of the way. This one is driven by a person in a hurry to go to a commercial complex located not far from there to start his working day. But the highway is completely blocked and he would lose a lot of time. He decides to take a crazy but effective solution, get out of the way and onto an on-ramp by reversing at high speed. You may have heard of a similar case on the roads of Washington, D.C., where a motorist was caught on camera reversing into other cars. But the difference is that the white SUV seen in the footage doesn't have a gearbox failure. The driver simply wants to save some time and have fun. At no time does he try to turn around or deviate from his route. We can see him crossing, still in reverse, 2 traffic lights with a very surprising prowess and skill. Finally, he succeeds in his bet and gets satisfaction. He arrives at the shopping complex and parks in the parking lot of a Kroger store. He is on time for his workday, but it's hard to imagine that he didn't get into trouble with the police after this performance. But he gave us a good laugh, and fortunately, he didn't cause any accidents. These spectacular images date from 2015 and they show a busy street in the city of Nepal. It is 10 minutes to noon and for the moment everything is fine. It is an ordinary day, and the population, far from sensing what was going to happen in the following seconds, was only thinking about how to occupy their day. This April 25, 2015, precisely at the minute you see, Nepal has suffered the worst earthquake that the country has known since 1934. The surveillance camera starts shaking, the population is panicked, and vehicles come to a standstill. The most interesting part of these images is the movement of the ground and the swaying of buildings on the horizon. The passers-by at the moment of the catastrophe have the good reflex to move away from the most dangerous places, that is, the fronts of buildings. They line up in the middle of the roadway, which is the most open area, far from the exterior walls and electrical cables. The tremors last for long seconds. We see people panicking, regrouping, crawling on the road. It is the maximum alert. In the distance, the horizon moves imperceptibly. Finally, the tremors stop. The worst is over, and the people present in this street are safe and sound. And they are very lucky, because the earthquake, whose epicenter was located 77 kilometers northwest of Kathmandu, and which was felt as far as India, caused more than 8,800 deaths in Nepal. 1.5 million people were left without homes, food, and water. What's even more impressive is that Chinese seismologists had stated that on April 25, 2015, and at the time these images are filmed, Mount Everest moved 3 centimeters to the southwest. This is huge. In addition, the next day and the day after that, near the epicenter of the earthquake, 2 avalanches caused additional damage. In short, the disaster was such that Nepalese Prime Minister declared 3 days of national mourning, and about 20 countries came to the rescue of Nepal by sending medical personnel, food, medicine, and blankets. Unfortunately, Nepal is very exposed to seismic risks. In 2016 and in 2018, the country had to face 2 new earthquakes. Nothing is wrong with the images you are about to see. A surveillance camera recorded in a quiet street in the village of Vaslui, Romania, a short sequence featuring 2 men who would like to forget this very embarrassing moment forever. A man, more than drunk, is standing slightly bent over in the middle of the road when a cart pulled by a horse and a car arrives behind him, and on which a man, even drunker than the first one, is camped. This man obviously has only one desire: to resist sleep. We can imagine that he wants to keep at least a weak consciousness of reality in order to follow the path that leads him to his destination. In the meantime, the other man remains as still as a post, but an incident will wake him up from his torpor. The car, which was driving slowly, had to stop because the horse hitched to the cart got tangled up in a small ditch on the side of the road, and the jolt shocked the drowsy individual who was already having trouble keeping his balance. We see him slide off the cart, fall like a sack of potatoes, and end up lying on the ground with his head under the vehicle's tray. During this time, the drunk in the middle of the road comes back to life, assimilates as best as he can this strange situation that is unfolding before his eyes. Finally, he takes fear and believes to have to flee. We see him staggering backwards in a comical way until he disappears from the images. He probably stumbled on the sidewalk. On the other side, the man is still on the ground and his fall probably woke him up a little from his lethargy. But obviously, he still had to suffer the fall. And besides, he must have been drunk and trying to pull the wounded horse out of the mess he was in. Unfortunately, one can assume that the driver of the car was also under the influence of alcohol and that he should not be counted on. In short, one wonders if the rest of the journey went smoothly for our original adventurer. And so ends our video on the most amazing things filmed on the road. We hope you enjoyed watching it. As usual, feel free to tell us your impressions and opinions in the comments. Which of these film sequences surprised you the most? Do you like this video? Then don't forget to put a blue thumb, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you won't miss anything from our next publications. See you tomorrow!